Charles Segelke was born in Germany and came to La Crosse in September of 1856. He started a small woodworking shop that became the Segelke and Kohlhaas Manufacturing Company, which manufactured sash, doors, blinds, and other material, including hardwood floors, stairs, stair railings, newel posts, and balustrades. Until the turn of the 20th century, La Crosse was a major lumber milling center, and Segelke Kohlhaas took advantage of the large supply of raw materials available. By 1902, Segelke Kohlhaas was a major manufacturing firm in downtown La Crosse. The company's industrial campus grew to cover several city blocks, including everything west of 2nd Street between Cass Street and Cameron Avenue to the Mississippi River. The company also established branches in Chicago, Milwaukee, and Detroit, each of which consisted of warehouses to store the unfinished work that was shipped from La Crosse, and a small factory that employed 20 to 30 workmen. Early on Sunday, October 26, 1902, 72-year-old Charles Segelke and his 16-year-old grandson Arthur Buste, then a sophomore at La Crosse High School, went out on the Mississippi River with 7 other men to hunt and fish near Brownsville, Minnesota. The group all knew each other and had gone on similar excursions several times before. When they reached their destination, Segelke and Buste left the group in a small skiff to fish by themselves. They were never seen again.
With what's out there on the river, it could easily have hit a stump or something else in the river that might have made them tip. Or maybe one of them just stood up and decided that's how they wanted to fish that day, and that's what happened. The water could have been cold at that time, and when they hit the water, hypothermia sets in relatively quickly with the water temperatures at that time. They could have possibly hit their head. I'm assuming they weren't wearing life jackets, which would have helped to get them. So that's a possibility. I've heard stories where someone tried to help the other person and they both got into trouble.
Given the familiarity in the group and the normal habits of the men, it wasn't evident that anything was even wrong until nightfall, when they hadn't yet returned. The group went into Brownsville to see if Charles and Arthur had left the river and went into town. The group headed back to La Crosse and immediately checked in at the Segelke home in the unlikely event that they had headed back there before the rest of the group. The hope was quickly lost. This would have been the first Charles's wife Augusta and Arthur's parents Max and Dora Buste would have heard anything about them being missing. Even though it was full dark, search parties began immediately scouring the river around Brownsville when it was determined Charles and Arthur were missing. Newspapers later noted the futility and danger of that evening's search. The La Crosse Chronicle said this about that night: "It was decided, although as black a midnight as ever lay upon the river made effective searching impossible and made the passage itself dangerous, to send another launch with a big searching party back to the scene of the day's sport. Out into the night went the launch in the teeth of a biting gale, but to no purpose, and morning dawned with still no trace of the missing men." Segelke Kohlhaas Company executives detailed 10 men from its shops to search the river every day after that. When the boat, an oar, and a minnow pail were discovered a couple of days later, all hope of finding them alive was gone.
Not knowing, they went off and they didn't know where they were. There wasn't any phones or communications at that time, but just going to the landing to see if they would have went home or whatever, what happened. And when they didn't hear that, just to get people out on the river, it's difficult at night, even today, to get out there and try to navigate to find people. But at that time, early on, there's still a chance that you could have found them alive and done some resuscitation or whatever to get them to safety. To me, it would have been scary. I mean, I've been out there at night on the river today, and back then they probably would not have had some of the navigational aids that we have, where you have reflectors off the navigation buoys. So I'm guessing they were just using, I don't know if they even were using spotlights or what type of lights that they had out there to try to help them. So I think it would have been very difficult to do that kind of search at that time. Usually voices carry very well over water. Sometimes I'll hear someone talking and they're farther away than you think. And again, you don't know how far they went out. And that's such a wide area of the river. They could have gone to the Wisconsin side and no one would have realized.
When the search and rescue operations changed over to search and recovery, it was believed that the bodies were likely caught on one of the many wing dams along the shores of the river. These man-made barriers extend partway into the river, forcing water into a fast-moving center channel. This slows the water flow near the riverbanks and reduces sediment buildup. Without modern dive capabilities, if the bodies were caught on one of these dams underwater, they would be hard to discover. To assist in the recovery efforts, searchers used dynamite thrown into the river near these dams in an attempt to dislodge the bodies, which would cause them to float to the surface.
Things really slow down when you go into recovery. When you're out on the rescue, you're trying to do it quickly because there is the potential of saving a life. When you turn into recovery, everybody kind of takes a step back, make sure that the rescuers are doing things safely. We're doing it systematically, so we're covering the area as much as we can at that time. So basically slowing down, making sure we're using all the tools available that's out there to find the individuals. There's lots of, we call them strainers, trees that are in the river that they could have caught something on, some of the wing dams, so many things in the river that they could have easily got caught up on. The dynamite really surprised me. I had never heard of them doing that before. But again, you have to be careful when you're using that dynamite. They could have easily have moved the bodies if they were in that area and then just sent them farther downriver.
The search for the bodies kicked into high gear when a reward was offered by the Segelke Coal House Company. $500 for Charles and $200 for his grandson Arthur. In today's dollars, that would mean over $25,000. This was advertised in the local newspapers for 40 days straight. This was a powerful incentive and drew the interest of hundreds of searchers in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Over 2 weeks into the search, the mayor of New Albin, Iowa, 15 miles south of Brownsville, is quoted in the paper as saying, "Though the river and shores between La Crosse and New Albin are full of rivermen, clam diggers, and all sorts of people dragging the river bottom for the bodies of Mr. Segelke and young Buste, no trace of their remains have yet been found." Segelke Coal House stopped advertising its reward on December 13th. Ice was probably covering most of the river by then, and nearly all the searchers had given up. One of the many searchers, Herman Effner of Brownsville, was said to have gone temporarily insane over the lost cause and the elusive reward. He became convinced that only he could find the bodies and spent every day for over a month dragging the river bottom in the area between La Crosse and Brownsville. He even regularly visited a trance medium in La Crosse, and for $1, she would share her visions of where exactly to search. His failure to find the bodies must have meant he was doing something wrong, and this belief, along with his dwindling funds, likely accelerated his descent into madness. Despite the tragedy to a founding partner, the Segelke and Coal House Manufacturing Company carried on and was a major manufacturing concern in downtown La Crosse for over 100 years, from the late 1850s through 1960. However, Prohibition hit La Crosse particularly hard in the 1920s, given its prominent brewing industry, and continuing through the Great Depression, demand for luxury, high-quality millwork and interior finishes dropped off. Parts of the sprawling campus began to close. Many employees were laid off, and the different departments began to consolidate. Further financial troubles in the 1950s led to a bankruptcy that shut it down for good in 1960. Only one historic building remains standing on 2nd Street South, an office building that was recently added to. The area is now largely occupied by the Cass Street entrance and Cameron Avenue exit to the iconic bridge across the Mississippi River. Augusta Segelke continued to live in La Crosse on 5th Avenue South near Cass Street in the same house she had shared with her husband Charles. until she died in 1922 at the age of 89. She was survived by 2 daughters. One of those daughters, Arthur Buse's mother, Dora, died in Washington, D.C. at the age of 78 in 1944. She was survived by 2 sons, a daughter, and 3 grandchildren.